My mother-in-law told people that I trapped her son by getting pregnant. Then she saw recent photos of my baby and completely broke down, crying and begging for another chance. From the very beginning, his mother, Pellet, had strong opinions about our relationship. She believed Arlo could do better. In her view, I wasn't attractive enough, accomplished enough, or worthy enough for her ideal son. She smiled politely at me during family dinners, but I could feel her judging every word I said and every move I made. She commented on my job, saying it didn't pay enough. She criticized my apartment for being too small. She made remarks about my family not being as established as hers. None of it was openly cruel, but the meaning was obvious. In her eyes, I was beneath her son, and she seemed to be waiting for him to realize it. Whenever Arlo noticed his mother's behavior, he defended me. He told her I was the love of his life and that she needed to accept it. She would apologize and promise to do better, but the next time we saw her, the subtle remarks would start again. I learned to ignore it because I loved Arlo, and marrying him meant accepting his mother as part of the deal. I believed things would improve after the wedding. Instead, they got worse. 2 years into our marriage, I became pregnant. Arlo was overjoyed. He cried when I showed him the positive test and immediately began planning the nursery. He told everyone he knew that he was going to be a father. His excitement made me fall in love with him all over again. Pellet's reaction couldn't have been more different. When we announced the pregnancy at a family dinner, she didn't smile or congratulate us. She simply stared at me and asked how far along I was. When I said 8 weeks, she counted backward on her fingers, as if she were trying to catch me in a lie. Then she commented that the timing was very convenient. When Arlo asked what she meant, she brushed it off and changed the subject. After that dinner, the rumors began. Pellet started telling relatives that I had trapped her son. She claimed I got pregnant on purpose to keep him from leaving the marriage. She said women like me used babies as insurance. She insisted Arlo was too naive to see what I was doing and that someone needed to protect him. I found out during a baby shower when Arlo's cousin mentioned it casually, assuming I already knew. She believed Arlo had confronted his mother. He hadn't, because he had no idea. Pellet had been careful to spread her accusations only to people she believed wouldn't tell us. That night, I told Arlo everything. He was furious and immediately called his mother, demanding an explanation. Pellet denied saying anything negative. She claimed the cousin had misunderstood and insisted she would never accuse me of something so awful. She cried about being attacked unfairly, and somehow the conversation ended with Arlo apologizing to her. Our daughter was born in the spring, and she looked exactly like Arlo. She had his nose, his chin, and the same unusual eye color that ran in his family. She even had the same birthmark on her left shoulder. The nurses commented on how much she resembled him. The doctors joked that she was his twin and that I had done all the work. Everyone said the same thing. Everyone except Pellet. When Pellet visited the hospital, she held the baby for less than a minute before handing her back. She said the baby looked small. She said she didn't resemble Arlo at all. She suggested babies sometimes look like one parent at first, but change later. In a room full of people who could clearly see the resemblance, she planted doubt. Over the following months, Pellet escalated. She told extended family members she wasn't sure the baby was Arlo's. She suggested I had cheated and passed off another man's child as his. She advised Arlo to get a paternity test before becoming too attached. All the while, she smiled at me during Sunday dinners. This time, Arlo heard about it from multiple relatives. Too many people repeated the same comments for Pellet to deny them. When he confronted her again, she admitted she had concerns. She said a mother had the right to protect her son. She claimed the baby didn't look like him, and a test would give her peace of mind. She insisted if I had nothing to hide, I should welcome it. Arlo looked at his mother, then at our daughter sleeping in my arms. A child who had his face, his features, and his family traits. He told her if she needed a test to believe him, then she didn't trust him at all. He said demanding proof when the evidence was right in front of her showed she wanted to be right more than she wanted a relationship with her grandchild. He told her until she apologized sincerely and stopped spreading lies, she was not welcome in our home. Pellet accused him of choosing me over his own mother. Arlo replied that he was choosing his wife and daughter over someone who refused to accept them. She stormed out, clearly expecting him to call and back down. He never did. Weeks turned into months. Without Pellet in our lives, everything felt lighter. Our daughter, Imogen, began doing little things that filled my heart. She grabbed her toes, made soft, gurgling sounds, and kicked excitedly when she heard Arlo's voice. We spent evenings on the floor watching her discover her hands. No one questioned her paternity. No one spread lies. No one made me feel like I had to prove myself. One Saturday morning, my mom came over with groceries and that determined look she gets when she plans to help. She made breakfast, cleaned up, and encouraged me to take a shower. When I returned, she had Imogen on a blanket doing tummy time. I sat down and watched them quietly. My mom looked at me gently and asked me how I was really doing, not the polite answer, but the truth. Something in her voice broke me. I started crying right there on the floor, completely overwhelmed. She held me while Imogen kicked happily nearby. I told her I was exhausted from being made the villain in a story I didn't create. I did nothing wrong except love someone whose mother hated me, and somehow I became the problem. My mom told me that Pellet's lies reflected her own character, not mine. She said anyone with eyes could see Imogen was Arlo's daughter. She reminded me that people who believed rumors over evidence weren't worth my tears. I cried harder because I needed to hear that. Later that day, Arlo received a call from his brother, Fletcher. Fletcher warned us that Pellet was telling extended family she was the victim. She claimed we were keeping her grandchild away for no reason and that Arlo had chosen his wife over his mother. She conveniently left out everything she had done. Arlo was furious. He said his mother still didn't understand what she had done wrong. She had accused me of entrapment, suggested infidelity, and demanded tests, and now wanted sympathy for facing consequences. I told Arlo we needed to take control of the story. We needed to tell the truth. He agreed. He typed a detailed message to the family group chat, explaining everything his mother had said and done and why boundaries were necessary. He sent it before either of us could hesitate. Some relatives supported us. Others urged forgiveness. His brother minimized everything. Arlo responded firmly, explaining false accusations were not concern. Eventually, he muted the chat. 3 weeks later, Imogen began sleeping through the night. I finally felt rested. At her 6-month checkup, the pediatrician confirmed she was healthy and thriving. I felt proud. In the waiting room, I ran into one of Arlo's distant cousins. I could tell she'd heard the rumors. Instead of shrinking away, I showed her photos of Imogen. Her expression changed instantly. She apologized and admitted she'd been misled. That night, Arlo and I decided to start sharing more photos. If people could see the truth, the lies wouldn't survive.
We created a shared photo album and sent it to the extended family with a short message saying we wanted to share our daughter's first 6 months. The response was immediate. Within minutes, relatives began commenting. They pointed out identical features, saying she had Arlo's nose, his chin, his eyes, and even his expressions. Some shared old baby photos of Arlo for comparison, and the resemblance was undeniable. Several people sent private messages apologizing for doubting me and admitting they should never have believed the accusations. The album spread quickly beyond our immediate circle. Cousins showed it to their parents. Aunts forwarded it to uncles. By the next day, nearly everyone in Arlo's extended family had seen the photos. That afternoon, Jacqueline texted me. She said the pictures were circulating widely and that many people were questioning why they had ever believed Pet's claims. Then she added something that made my stomach tighten. She said Pet had seen the photos and reacted strongly. I wondered whether she was upset because she finally realized how wrong she had been, or if she was simply grieving the consequences of her actions. The distinction mattered. One suggested remorse, the other suggested regret over what she had lost. 2 days later, Arlo's phone rang during dinner. He glanced at the screen and immediately stiffened. He answered, and I could hear Stuart's voice through the phone. Stuart said Pet had been crying non-stop since seeing the photos. He said she wanted to come over and talk, and that they could be at our place in 20 minutes if we agreed. Arlo looked at me. I shook my head. He told his father no and said they were not welcome until his mother took real responsibility for what she had done. Stuart argued, but Arlo interrupted him. He said spreading lies about me to the entire family couldn't be resolved with a single conversation. He reminded him that his mother had months to apologize sincerely and chose, instead, to double down on her accusations. Stuart said Pet was suffering. Arlo replied that I suffered too when his mother told everyone I was a cheater who trapped him with another man's child. The call ended badly. The following days were difficult. Arlo came home exhausted and quiet. He held Imogen for long periods without speaking. I could see the stress weighing on him. One night he came home late and told me a major work project had failed and that he was blamed for mistakes that weren't his. I hugged him, and he leaned into me, completely drained. He sat on the couch, holding Imogen's blanket, staring into space. I made him tea. He forgot about it and drank it cold an hour later. That night, Arlo finally admitted he had been thinking about his mother and asked if we were being too harsh by maintaining no contact. I felt panic rise, but I listened. He said the situation was affecting him more than he expected. He said he missed his mom, even though he was still angry. I reminded him of everything she had done, accusing me of entrapment, suggesting infidelity, and pushing for a paternity test despite obvious evidence. He said he knew and wasn't excusing her behavior. He was just struggling. We argued for the first time since cutting her off. He suggested supervised visits if she apologized properly. I said her tears didn't undo months of damage. Crying over missing her granddaughter wasn't the same as being sorry for destroying my reputation. He agreed, but said maybe we could hear her out. I told him she hadn't earned forgiveness yet. He said he was tired of being caught between us. I said I was tired of being treated like the villain for protecting myself and our daughter. We kept our voices low because Imogen was asleep, but the tension was real. I slept on the couch that night. In the morning, Arlo apologized. He said work stress was making everything worse and that he wasn't trying to pressure me. He said any reconciliation would require genuine accountability from his mother and that I had the final say on when and if she met Imogen. Hearing that eased the tightness in my chest. Later that week, I met my friend Natasha for coffee. I told her everything. She reminded me that Pet accused me of serious things and tried to undermine my marriage. She said protecting myself and my child wasn't cruel, it was necessary. She said boundaries were about safety, not punishment. I went home feeling steadier. Arlo and I later discussed what real accountability would look like. We agreed it meant a direct apology to me, clear acknowledgement of harm, changed behavior over time, and correcting the lies she spread. Arlo said he would communicate these expectations. That weekend, I took Imogen to the park and posted a photo of her smiling in the spring sun. Friends commented on how much she looked like Arlo. The photo was shared in the family chat. I knew Pet would see it, and I no longer cared. That evening, my phone rang from an unknown number. It was Pet. She was sobbing and repeating that she was wrong and needed to see her granddaughter. I felt anger and unexpected pity. She begged me to listen. I told her this wasn't the right way to apologize. She needed to take real responsibility. She kept begging. I ended the call. When Arlo came home, I told him everything. He immediately called his father and told him Pet needed to respect boundaries and stop contacting me directly. Stuart defended her, saying she was devastated. Arlo responded firmly that her suffering was the result of her actions and crying wasn't accountability. He ended the call. The following days were tense. We were both exhausted, and Imogen became fussier, picking up on our stress. Small frustrations turned into arguments. We apologized, but the tension lingered. Then Jacqueline called and asked to meet. She said Pet's reaction was genuine and that she was ashamed. I listened, but told her real apologies weren't complicated if they were sincere. Pet knew what she needed to do. Jacqueline admitted Pet struggled with admitting fault. I told her that wasn't my responsibility. Later, Arlo and I agreed that if his mother wanted reconciliation, she needed to write a letter acknowledging everything she had done. Arlo told his father. Stuart replied that it was excessive. Arlo said if a sincere apology was too much, then nothing would change. 2 weeks passed with no letter. Life moved on. Imogen learned to roll over, and we celebrated without thinking about Pet. Then, one afternoon, a letter arrived. I recognized the return address immediately. Inside were 3 pages of handwriting. Pet acknowledged every accusation she had made. She admitted she spread lies because she didn't think I was good enough for her son and felt threatened by our family. She apologized for questioning Imogen's paternity and admitted she wanted to be right more than she wanted the truth. She wrote that seeing the photos made her realize she had missed months of her granddaughter's life because of her own pride and cruelty.
She wrote that she was ashamed of herself. She said she understood if I never forgave her, but she needed me to know she had been wrong about me from the very beginning. The words felt heavy in my hands. I read the letter 3 times. Some parts felt genuine. Other parts felt like what someone writes when they know the correct things to say. Words are easy. Real change shows up in behavior. I took the letter into the kitchen where Arlo was feeding Imogen mashed sweet potatoes. He looked up as I walked in, and I handed him the pages without speaking. He wiped his hands on a dish towel and started reading. I watched his expression shift with each paragraph. His eyes filled, his jaw tightened. When he finished, he placed the letter carefully on the counter and stared at it for a long moment. He said it was the most accountability he had ever seen his mother take for anything. She said she had never admitted being wrong so completely before, and that maybe she was capable of real change. I told him I wanted to believe that too, but we needed to move carefully. He agreed right away. We couldn't let her back into our lives just because she wrote a strong apology. We needed to see consistent change over time. After Imogen went down for her nap, we sat at the kitchen table and talked through next steps. The letter was a meaningful first step, but we weren't ready for in-person contact. We needed to see whether Pet would actually work to rebuild trust, or if this was another attempt to manipulate the situation. That evening, Arlo called his mother. I sat beside him on the couch so I could hear the conversation. He told her we had received the letter and appreciated the apology. He explained that rebuilding trust would take time and would require her to show changed behavior with the family. There was a long pause on the line. Then Pet said she understood. She said she would do whatever it took and that she knew she had no right to immediate forgiveness. Her voice sounded different, quieter, less confident. Arlo asked her to begin correcting the lies she had spread about me with everyone who had heard them. He said repairing the damage to my reputation was essential if she was serious about making amends. She agreed without hesitation, which surprised both of us. She then asked if she could send a small gift for Imogen. Arlo looked at me. I considered it briefly and nodded. He told her she could send something modest to our address. The call ended soon after. We sat together in silence afterward. I didn't feel relieved or hopeful exactly, but the constant tension I'd carried for months eased slightly. A week passed. Imogen learned to clap her hands, and we celebrated like it was a major achievement. Life continued with its usual rhythm of naps, feedings, and laundry. Then a package arrived with Pet's return address. I opened it carefully while Arlo stood beside me. Inside was a soft yellow handmade blanket with white edging.
The stitches were careful and even. There was also a children's book about a family of rabbits. A note said she had made the blanket herself and remembered Arlo loving soft blankets as a baby. The gesture felt thoughtful rather than performative. It felt like effort, not money. I ran my fingers over the blanket and felt something shift slightly in my chest. Not trust, not forgiveness, just a small openness to the possibility of change. Arlo used the blanket during Imogen's next nap. She grabbed the edge and pulled it toward her face. I took a photo and saved it to my phone without sending it to anyone. 2 days later, Fletcher called Arlo. I was washing bottles when Arlo put the call on speaker. Fletcher said Pet had been actively correcting family members who still believed her earlier accusations. She was openly telling people she had been wrong and that she had damaged a good person's reputation because of her own issues. Fletcher said he'd heard this independently from multiple relatives. This mattered. It showed behavior beyond private apologies. It showed she was willing to admit fault publicly, even when it was uncomfortable. That afternoon, I met Natasha for coffee and told her about the letter, the blanket, and Fletcher's call. I asked whether I was being too cautious or not cautious enough. Natasha reminded me that protecting my daughter from someone who spent months calling her mother a liar was reasonable. She said I had every right to control the terms of reconciliation and to require trust to be earned. That evening, Arlo and I sat at the dining table with a notebook and wrote out clear conditions for future contact. Pet could never speak negatively about me again. Visits would be supervised. She had to respect our parenting decisions. Any return to her old behavior would result in immediate no contact. We both signed the page. Arlo emailed it to his parents. Stuart called within an hour and said the conditions were excessive. Arlo told him they were non-negotiable. Then Pet took the phone. She said she accepted every condition without argument and asked when she might be able to meet Imogen. Arlo said we needed at least another month of consistent behavior. She agreed. Over the next month, updates came through Jacqueline. Pet continued correcting her lies and began therapy to address her controlling behavior. She didn't push for faster reconciliation. She stayed consistent. I waited for her to become defensive or impatient, but she didn't. When my mother visited, I told her everything. She said she was proud of me for holding firm boundaries while still allowing space for reconciliation. She reminded me to watch closely for old patterns and trust my instincts. After 6 weeks, Arlo and I agreed to try a supervised meeting near a park. Jacqueline offered to attend as a buffer. We scheduled it for Saturday morning. The night before, I barely slept, replaying every possible scenario. Arlo reassured me that we would leave immediately if anything felt wrong. His calm steadiness helped me finally fall asleep. At the park, Pet waited on a bench near the fountain. She looked smaller and more hesitant. She didn't approach until invited. When she knelt beside the stroller, she stayed at Imogen's level and simply looked at her. She said Imogen was beautiful and looked just like Arlo. There was no defensiveness, only regret. She apologized to me directly and admitted she had been wrong from the beginning. She explained her fear of losing control had driven her behavior. She said seeing Imogen's resemblance to Arlo forced her to face the truth she had been denying. The visit lasted 40 minutes. She respected every boundary, asked permission for everything, and showed no trace of her old behavior. When we left, she thanked us and didn't push for more. Over the next 2 months, we had several more supervised visits. Each went smoothly. Pet remained respectful and consistent. Extended family began noticing the change. Relatives reached out to apologize for believing her accusations. On our 3rd wedding anniversary, Arlo told me, watching me protect our family while allowing room for accountability showed me real strength. Our relationship with Pet would never be close, but it was now structured on clear boundaries and respect. I looked down at our daughter, Arlo's eyes, his smile, and no doubt where she belonged. That was enough.